And we're live. Well, welcome back to the Bell's Club podcast. I'm your host, David Bell. And on today's episode, we'll be taking a look at round 7 of the 2025 Formula One World Championship, with this week's Grand Prix being held at the Autodromo Enzo e Dino Ferrari, or also known as Imola. Now, let's get ready for those 5 green lights, and we'll be underway. And now, to start off this week's episode, we're going to take a look at FP1 and FP2. So, on the first practice session, kind of the biggest news or the biggest story that we saw from the weekend was we welcomed back to the grid Franco Colapinto, and he was in place of Jack Doohan, who was unfortunately demoted back to the reserve driver position at Alpine. But a bit earlier in the first practice session, Alex Albon had a decent snap of understeer on the exit of the first chicane, and he took his Williams off-roading. And to be fair, he probably or maybe was looking for kind of a part-time summer job, or he just wanted to do the gardeners kind of out of a job. Then at the end of the first practice session, there was a dreaded red flag waved as Bortoleto rode the curb on the exit of turn 18 and crashed his car into the barrier. But after the crash, thankfully, he was okay. Now, with that red flag being waved because of Bortoleto's crash, that the flag itself basically ended, well, didn't basically end it, it did end the first practice session. But our top 3 drivers were, surprise, surprise, the 2 McLarens in P1 and P2, with Oscar in P1, Lando in P2. Then they were followed up by Sainz in Williams in P3. Now, during the second practice session, or FP2, and well, frankly, in FP1 as well, to be fair, but we saw a lot of drivers being held up or being impeded or impeding each other, which is kind of expected, especially from such a tight track, which the Imola kind of circuit is. And there's not a lot of spaces for them to kind of go too wide, especially going into corners or even the straights. Then, in the closing 10 minutes of the second practice session, a yellow flag was waved. And it looked like Hajar lost the rear of his car and spun off the track, and he ended up in the gravel trap. But he luckily didn't get his car stuck in the gravel and was able to position his car correctly to rejoin the track. But when the track was clear and he tried to rejoin, he spun the rear wheels of his car, which dug into the gravel, and that's what beached his car, unfortunately, which brought out the red flags. And again, same as the Bortoleto's crash in the previous session, that red flag ended the second practice session. Then again, we didn't see much change in the top 2 drivers with the best times in the second practice session, with Piastri in P1, Norris in P2 again. But we did see a change up in P3 with Gasly finishing with the third best time of the day. Now we're going to have a look at Saturday now with the third practice session and qualifying. So let's take a look at the FP3 session first, where Lawson himself had a good spin on the exit of turn 3. He flat spotted his tyres, and you can even see from the onboard footage that as a result of flat spotting his tyres, we can see a massive vibration. You can actually see the camera fucking vibrating, like he had a industrial vibrator going on. But he did manage to limp back to the pits to get his tyres changed, and he was able to continue that session for the day. Now, looking at the third practice session, or just watching the third practice session, it was one of the quieter sessions compared to the first 2. But we did see a shake-up at the top of the timing charts. Just kidding, of course we fucking didn't. Both McLarens, again, topped the timing tables, but Norris was in P1 this time, with Piastri in P2. Then we did see another different driver in P3 this time, with Verstappen taking that third place. Now we're going to move on to qualifying. We're going to start off with Q1. So, to start off that session, it was actually pretty uneventful, up until Yuki brought out the red flags with his massive crash on the exit of turn 6, which he managed to roll his car a few times after hitting the wall. And thankfully, to whatever God was watching Yuki that day, that the improvements to car safety and, frankly, track safety in Formula One, as just 10 years ago, the crash could have been deadly for Yuki. But thankfully, Yuki did manage to get out of the car and walk away. It looked like pretty unscathed. Maybe he was just shaken up a bit, but no real damage, or he wasn't really injured from the crash. But due to that crash, Yuki did end up starting in last place for the race, and he started the race from the actual pit lane itself. Then it was good to see Carlo Pinto back in the car again after so long, but towards the end of Q1, Franco ran a bit wide and put a wheel on the grass at turn 4. He lost the control of his car and crashed into the barrier. So it wasn't exactly Franco's kind of best weekend back in the car, which he gave his mechanics kind of a hefty job to do all that rest of that day, and frankly probably early into the early hours of Sunday morning. But with the time Franco actually put on the timing charts, would have seen him into Q2, but unfortunately, due to, his car being fucking smashed to pieces, he didn't make it into Q2. Then at the end of the session, we did lose 5 drivers, those being Lawson, Hulkenberg, Ocon, Berman, and again, Tsunoda. Then compared to the Q1 session, the Q2 session was a fucking boring session to watch, with just different teams trying different run plans, different fuel loads versus tire compounds. If they want to go for attempt to try like a one-stop strategy, if they wanted to back off on the two-stop, that's basically all kind of we saw during the second session. But with a time of 1 minute 15 seconds 0.198, we saw Sainz with a smashingly good lap, which put him at the top of the timing charts and put him through to Q3 in the P1 position. But I have to say, fuck those Astons, bro. With both of their drivers, Alonso and Stroll, putting together some decent laps to knock both of the Ferrari drivers out of Q2. Then, at the end of the Q2 session, we lost another 5 drivers. Those, unfortunately, being Leclerc and Hamilton. Then we got Antonelli, Bortoleto, and again, finally, Carlo Pinto. Then in the final qualifying session, or Q3, we only saw maybe 1 or 2 laps from each driver, as the drivers put through 1 lap, went back into the pits, changed tires, changed fuel loads, or kind of just alter the car to see if they can get more performance for that second lap to hopefully bump them up closer to pole position, P2, P3, kind of the front of the grid for Sunday. But again, there was no surprise with a time of 1 minute, 14 seconds, 0.670, where we saw Oscar Piastri take pole position in Imola. Now, this pole marks his 3rd overall pole position in F1. Then Oscar was followed up by Max in P2, then Russell in P3. Now, let's look ahead to Sunday for the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. Now, on Sunday, for the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, or the Imola Grand Prix, is it kind of fucked up, or is it just me, or when we don't see cars kind of crash into each other, we don't see like a big wipeout at the start of races anymore? Is that just me having a fucked up way of thinking? But we did see Max manage to get past Piastri in the second corner to take the lead of the race, which we'll kind of talk about a little bit more later on. Up until, say, around lap 29, it was just a standard race. There was a decent amount of overtaking. There was no real incidents from drivers getting close to each other, wiping each other out, or running wide, spinning out, anything like that. But on lap 29, Ocon was told to pull over to the side of the track because his car had an issue. And we later found out from, I think it was either the drivers' press conference, or well, not press conference, the interviews they do post-race, or it was just like an announcement from Haas, that his car had a actual air intake issue. Now, that incident led perfectly for an opportunity for Max to basically get a free pit stop and to change his tires, and because of that, he wouldn't have lost track position. So he was still out in the P1 position with newer, fresher tires. Then on the latter stages of the race, around 46 laps out of 63, the yellow flag was waved, but then was later upgraded to a full safety car as Kimi Antonelli pulled over to the side of the track with engine problems, which again is like all played into Max's favour, which gave him another free pit stop to change his tyres, which again he didn't lose track position, and he could end the race with those fresh set of hard tyres. Then, because of the issue Kimi's car had, the Mercedes just ended up retiring the car from the race, unfortunately. But then, right at the end of the race, where we saw a pretty good scrap happening between Albon and the two Ferrari drivers, and it's just beautiful to watch cars scrapping with each other and getting close, and some really good racecraft between some experienced driver with like Hamilton, with two relatively fresher new drivers in Albon and Leclerc. Yes, they're still tenured members of the drivers, but they're still fresher compared to what Hamilton would be considered. Now, both Ferrari drivers did what they could to keep Albon behind them, but it's just beautiful to see the progress Williams has made over the last 2 seasons. And they're not at the back of the grid anymore, which is amazing to see considering Williams is one of the most successful team in F1 history. But it's just beautiful to see them capitalize on this kind of peak in performance they've got, where they're topping the midfield with 51 points. And I've got a feeling that we're going to see them on the podium sometime this season. We're going to see them on the podium very soon. By the looks of it, it's going to be Albon on the podium, because he's just outperforming his teammate Sainz. But Albon's been in the team a lot longer. He's more comfortable with the car, more comfortable with the team. And Sainz, it's still a bit of a learning experience for him. Yes, he is an F1 driver. He's one of the best drivers in the world. There's a reason why he's in an F1 car. But it's the same what can be considered with Hamilton. It's a new team, new race engineers, new pit crew, new car. It's all a learning process for the both of them. It only takes one of the big teams to mess up. For Mercedes, McLaren, Red Bull, Ferrari, and Williams will be there to capitalise on that mistake and bump up into those podium positions. And with that, the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix is complete. And I have to say a big congrats to Max Verstappen, who comfortably led the lead from basically the second corner of the first lap to finish in P1. Now, this win marks his 4th win in a row at Imola, and Max was actually followed up on the podium with Lando in P2 and Oscar in P3. Now, looking at the standings in the Constructors' Championship, the teams at the top have not changed, with McLaren still leading the Constructors with 279 points, followed in P2 by Mercedes with 147 points, and followed closely behind in P3 by Red Bull with 131 points. Then, as far as the Drivers' Championship is concerned, Piastri is still comfortably in the lead with 146 points, and he's followed up in P2 by his teammate Lando Norris with 133 points, and followed in 3rd position by this race's winner, Max Verstappen, with 124 points. And that will do us for this week's episode of the Bells Club podcast. I want to thank you all for listening to this week's episode, and if you feel like you've enjoyed, please feel free to follow us here on wherever you get your podcasts. And I look forward to talking to you all next week for round 8, or the legendary Monaco Grand Prix. Bye, everybody.